Welcome to Podkey Slopcast, where today it's governance fights, power plants, public equity, and practical AI use. A lot of the AI story right now comes down to control. Who gets to shape what models can do, who pays for the electricity, and who captures the upside if this really becomes infrastructure for the whole economy? The cleanest confirmed fact here is that Anthropic quietly degraded Claude on some frontier LLM development requests. It did that by modifying prompts and using steering vectors, and the key detail is what it did not do. It did not clearly refuse, and it did not offer a transparent fallback. That distinction matters because an explicit refusal tells the user the system has hit a policy boundary. A hidden degradation changes the quality of the answer without telling the user whether the model is failing, being censored, or just having an off day. For researchers and enterprise users, that's not a cosmetic issue. It undermines evaluation, reproducibility, and basic trust in the tool. Then came the backlash, and within 24 hours, Anthropic reversed the policy, apologized, and said these kinds of safeguards would be visible rather than hidden. That quick reversal cuts two ways. On one hand, it shows responsiveness, which is better than digging in. On the other hand, it suggests the company itself recognized the original approach was hard to defend once people saw it clearly. The broader concern is governance, not just one bad rollout. Anthropic also has a retention policy where user messages remain for 30 days after deletion, and employees can review prompts and outputs flagged for potential serious harm. The phrase potential serious harm is doing a lot of work there because it's defined internally and apparently without external criteria. That doesn't prove abuse, but it does create uncertainty around what gets reviewed, by whom, and under what safeguards. That uncertainty is especially sensitive for clients handling proprietary or government-related information. Legal commentators warned those policies could expose sensitive data, and Microsoft reportedly limited employee use of Claude in Copilot over those concerns. That is a concrete market signal. When a major partner narrows internal use, it usually means the risk discussion has moved beyond abstract ethics and into procurement and liability. Critics describe this as a toll booth problem. If a small number of labs can silently shape access to frontier model capabilities, they can become de facto gatekeepers over who gets to do advanced research and under what terms. That doesn't mean all safety controls are illegitimate. Frontier model development does raise real misuse concerns. But if the control is opaque, unaccountable, and embedded inside the product in ways users can't audit, then even a defensible safety goal starts to look like private governance without due process. The strongest takeaway here is not that safety is fake or monopoly fears are fully proven. It's that safety policies with major research consequences need transparency, auditability, and clearer definitions than trust us. The scale story is getting almost absurd, but the numbers are now concrete enough to take seriously. OpenAI is reportedly in advanced talks to lease a 10-gigawatt data center campus in Ohio on former uranium enrichment land, with reporting putting the full build around $500 billion and an initial roughly 800 megawatts online by 2028. At that size, this stops being a normal tech expansion story and starts looking like industrial policy, utility planning, and land use all fused together. The reported structure adds to that impression. NVIDIA as a financial backer, SB Energy operating the power plant, and renewed debate over tax exemptions that Ohio says have already cost $1.8 billion in foregone revenue. This is where the hype and the substance diverge a bit. The hype says demand for AI compute is effectively unlimited, so any giant build is automatically rational. The stronger supported claim is narrower. Leading firms believe access to power-constrained compute may be the main bottleneck, so they are racing to lock in capacity years ahead. That still leaves open whether every announced project will be fully utilized, earn its cost of capital, or survive changes in model efficiency. Governments are clearly not treating these projects as unambiguous wins. New York imposed a one-year moratorium on new data centers above 20 megawatts, and Seattle enacted a one-year ban after reports that 5 proposed centers could consume about a third of the city's electricity. Those are not anti-tech gestures in the abstract. They reflect a very practical fear that local grids, land, and political tolerance get consumed faster than public benefits arrive. Texas is trying a different route, with utility safeguards and infrastructure funding requirements aimed at preventing costs from being shifted onto ratepayers. That may be the key trade-off going forward. If AI data centers are truly essential infrastructure, then someone has to pay for the grid upgrades, generation, and transmission. If private firms get the upside while households absorb reliability risks or higher bills, the politics will harden very quickly. Private finance is also adapting fast. Broadcom announced a $35 billion AI compute fund, backed by Blackstone and Apollo, to finance about 1 gigawatt of compute using Broadcom custom chips, with the first deployment for Anthropic and a target of 20 gigawatts by 2048. The significance is less the headline size than the structure. Compute is starting to look like its own asset class, with long-duration capital, specialized hardware exposure, and financing models closer to energy or telecom than to ordinary software. That could bring discipline, because infrastructure investors usually care about contracts, utilization, and downside protection. It could also intensify concentration, because only the biggest firms can anchor these financing stacks and guarantee demand at scale. Then there's the question that shows up whenever private infrastructure gets this large: who gets the gains? President Trump publicly floated a sovereign wealth fund seeded by AI equity and said it would make the public very rich. As a political signal, that tells you the distribution question has escaped policy seminars and entered open national rhetoric. As a policy proposal, it's still extremely underspecified. We don't know the acquisition mechanism, the valuation logic, the governance model, or what prevents it from becoming a slogan attached to private winners after the fact. Related reporting says Sam Altman opposed Bernie Sanders' idea that OpenAI should give 50% of its equity to the public. That tension is real and easy to understand from both sides. Founders and investors argue that private control and upside are what finance the risk, speed, and talent concentration needed to build frontier systems. Critics argue that if AI compounds into trillions in value while also relying on public science, public infrastructure, favorable regulation, and potentially labor displacement, then purely private capture becomes politically unstable. Brad Gertzner's warning about an anti-revolutionary tax gets at that second point. Maybe the exact instrument is wrong, but the underlying logic is strong. If economic disruption is broad and ownership is narrow, backlash is likely. What's still uncertain is timing. These redistributive ideas can look premature if AI profits remain volatile and concentrated in spending rather than realized cash flow. But waiting until after the ownership structure is locked in may mean the public bargain is already gone. One useful grounding point in all this is that the practical value of AI still depends a lot on how people use it. A KPMG and UT Austin analysis of about 1.4 million workplace AI interactions found the highest impact users treat AI as a reasoning partner. They frame the problem, iterate, critique outputs, and steer the model instead of firing one prompt and hoping for magic. The important part is not just that power users are better, it's that the study argues these behaviors are teachable at scale. That matters because many companies appear to be overspending on licenses while underinvesting in usage quality, and only about 12% of users are reportedly getting real business value. The easy narrative is that current tools are overhyped because most employees don't transform their jobs overnight. The better supported reading is more conditional. A lot of value is there, but it depends on workflow design and human skill, not just model access. That creates an interesting contrast with the giant compute race. At the frontier, companies are competing to secure ever more power and capital. At the enterprise level, many organizations still haven't learned how to extract consistent value from the AI they already have. So there's a mismatch between macro ambition and micro execution. The practical implication is pretty straightforward. Training people to frame problems well, iterate deliberately, and challenge model outputs may produce more near-term value than simply buying the next more expensive model tier. That's the through line today. Control over model behavior, control over the grid, control over ownership, and control over whether AI use is actually any good. Thanks for listening to Podkey Slopcast. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.